servicios de interpretación al español. Vamos a estar atrás entregando los aparatos para la interpretación. Good afternoon. Whoever needs Spanish interpretation, we're going to be in the back, and we're going to be giving out the headsets. Thank you.
And I guess there's a white Jeep in the parking lot to our right with the doors open. Somebody left their doors open. Welcome, everybody. We can get started. Thank you. So thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Roy Morales. I'm the Public Safety Coordinator for the City of San Juan Bautista. I just want to welcome everybody. This is a great showing. We weren't sure how many people would show up, but obviously this is an important topic for not only the City of San Juan Bautista, but for surrounding areas. So you will hear a couple presentations, but at the very end, we'll have time for questions. And with that, I'd like to introduce our interim city manager, Ashley Collick.
Thank you, Roy. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, welcome. I just wanted to say good afternoon to you and introduce myself. My name is Ashley Collick. I'm the interim city manager for the City of San Juan Bautista. And I wanted to say a huge thank you to the City of Hollister's Fire Chief, Chief Goulding, the city staff that helped put this together today. And I think your being here today and your presence just underscores how deeply our community cares about the safety and well-being of everyone here. So I want to express my sincere gratitude to the staff today. And I just want to say this speaks to our spirit of collaboration and community, that you guys are here, you're hungry for information, and that's the purpose of the town hall today. So if I had a call to action, because that's what I've been hearing from the community, what can I do as a member of this community? Listen to what the experts have to say, take in the information that you're hearing today, and I encourage you to ask questions. Okay, after I ask my questions and I get my information, then what? Talk to each other. Talk to your representatives that are here today. Talk to your local community members. Talk to your local leaders. Talk to your state representatives. This is an extremely complex and dynamic issue, and I applaud all of you for being here today. It's really critical, especially concerning all of the fire incidents that we're seeing in Los Angeles and up and down the state of California. So thank you so much for being here. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mayor Jordan.
Thanks for that warm welcome. Thank you all, and I cannot reiterate this enough. We so appreciate everybody coming. This is a serious topic, and want to thank everybody. It's nice to see folks from the Canyon, from the Valley, from San Juan, CAL FIRE. Look at those uniforms, holy moly. Our local guys from from Hollister Fire Department who are stationed at the Coop. We appreciate your presence. Sorry, love you guys. If I can introduce a couple of folks, you've met our city manager and Ashley Collick and Roy Morales. We have code enforcement Oscar Soto, our city clerk Liz Soto, no relation, city council member Scott Friel, standing under the basketball hoop, city council member Jose Aranda. There he is. Another guy with a fan club. This is awesome. We have two of our board of supervisors here at the present. We have another one coming. Our supervisor for this area, Colin Kosmicki. Say hey so everybody can see you. Thank you. Supervisor Ignacio Velasquez, welcome. And again, I appreciate you all for being here. Any questions, we are very happy to answer them all. And I'd like to turn it over to Roy now. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mayor. And with that, we're going to get the agenda started, so hopefully everybody grabbed one at the back of the table. I'd like to introduce the Hollister Fire Chief, Chief Golding. He will give you an overview of fire services in the county of San Benito.
Give me just a second while we get the PowerPoint up. While we're doing that, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to present to you guys. I, just like my firefighters, take a lot of pride in being the Hollister Fire Chief, as well as serving San Benito County and the city of San Juan Bautista. I can talk big, I'm just not used to the microphone. But I'm told in order for the recording to get me, I have to speak into this. We may just have to go off of my notes and no PowerPoint. While we're working on that, I'll go ahead and get started. So again, this is supposed just as an overview, as your agenda says, of the fire services in San Benito County. There are 5 jurisdictions that have fire authority in San Benito County. There's Aromas Tri-Counties, which is located in the northeastern portion, and as their name says, Tri-Counties. They also touch Monterey County and Santa Cruz County. They provide services under a contract with CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE is another fire district that has jurisdiction in the county. In a little bit, Chief Nunez will come up and talk a little bit about CAL FIRE, but essentially CAL FIRE's responsibility is the state's mission, which means they're concerned with grass burning or vegetation burning within the state response area and the federal responsibility area. San Benito County, they have the authority for fire services everywhere with the exception of where Aromas Tri-Counties meets in the northeastern portion. That means all the local, in the unincorporated area, all the local response area for vegetation burning and all other incidents within the county jurisdiction that's unincorporated, with the exception of where Aromas Tri-County provides services. Then San Juan Bautista, the incorporated city, they have the jurisdiction for San Juan Bautista city limits, and then the city of Hollister, obviously same thing within the incorporated boundaries of the city of Hollister. Now, San Benito County and San Juan Bautista operate under a contract with the city of Hollister to provide these fire services. We might get to the PowerPoint here in just a second. It's recording you right now. That's right. We'll just go without the PowerPoint. I apologize. I don't want to get hung up on a PowerPoint. All right. Now it's got all my notes. All right, so talked about the 5 jurisdictions that are, 5 jurisdictions that have authority. So let's talk a little bit about the history. Prior to Hollister Fire having the contract to provide services to San Juan Bautista and San Benito County, Hollister Fire, and we're talking general terms now, we're not going to get it deep into the weeds, but general terms, the city of Hollister had 2 fire engines and a fire truck. A truck being the difference between an aerial device where the engines do not have an aerial device. So Hollister Fire was serviced by 2 fire engines and a fire truck. San Juan Bautista had 1 volunteer company. And when I say 1 volunteer company, they had several volunteers. Those volunteers made up the 1 volunteer company. Sometimes they staffed more than 1 engine. Sometimes they weren't able to staff an engine. But generally speaking, it was 1 volunteer company. And then San Benito County was under a contract with CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE provided 1 engine out of Fairview that was staffed with 2 personnel, plus it was supplemented by paid call firefighters, or PCFs. And then there was also an engine in San Juan Bautista that was a county engine, where the same San Juan Bautista volunteers would then staff the county engine and respond out to the greater San Juan Bautista area as the county response to those areas. If they were unable to staff the engines, then the engine would respond from Fairview Station out to the San Juan Bautista area. So how do we get to a contract with Hollister Fire? In 2012, CAL FIRE issued a letter stating that they intended to not renew their contract with San Benito County. At the time, the city of Hollister was facing some financial constraints, and so it was intended to be a mutually beneficial relationship where the county, who was in need of a fire service, and Hollister, that was facing financial troubles, would come together and provide services that allowed for the staffing levels to be maintained relatively to close to what they were, and providing services to both the city of Hollister and San Benito County. All right, thank you. So let's talk about Hollister Fire in its totality. So when I say Hollister Fire, I'm talking about Hollister Fire providing services to San Benito County and San Juan Bautista. So currently, Hollister Fire protects over 64,000 people. We cover roughly 1,388 square miles. We operate out of 4 stations with 4 fire engines. And our total call volume for 2024 was 5,100 calls, just over 5,100 calls. So I understand the call volume and what's going on with the fire service and the increasing call volume. We'll look back over the last several years. So in 2018, our call volume was 4,005 calls. That's for all 3 jurisdictions that we protect. 4,005 calls. 2019 went to 4245, and up and up and up, 4667, 4858, 4941, 5,089 calls, and then 2024, we ended up with 5,144 calls. So from 2018 to 2024, there was a 28.4% increase in call volume. That call volume continues to rise. Our staffing levels are not rising. That's just the call volume that's going up. So where do we operate these calls from? We have 4 stations, as I said before. 4 stations. Each station is staffed with a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. Additionally, there's an on-duty battalion chief who oversees the operations for the day. Now there's 3 shifts. So there's 3 people, 3 captains at Fire Station 4, 3 engineers at Fire Station 4, 3 firefighters at Fire Station 4. They just rotate through. So the total duty strength of the day is 13. So at any one time, the suppression personnel, there's 13 suppression personnel. In addition to our suppression personnel, out of our admin office, we also have a deputy fire marshal and a fire inspector. They're the ones that teach CPR, do fire extinguisher training. They deal with weed abatement issues. They deal with plan reviews. They do business inspections and event inspections, and they do it for all 3 of the jurisdictions. Okay, so that's 1 deputy fire marshal and 1 inspector. Additionally, we have a training captain, and that training captain is responsible for maintaining the training records for the entire department. There are some extensive training requirements. We'll get a little bit into that later on, but we have 1 individual who tracks all that. And then we have 2 administrative personnel, 1 who predominantly works on prevention stuff and helps the deputy fire marshal and the inspector, and then 1 other person who handles all the administrative duties for the department, and they all all operate under me as the fire chief for the 3 jurisdictions. So that total duty strength, the total daily 13 people, that's going to become an important number to remember. I know this is pretty difficult to hear, and Roy, do we have those sheets? Did you guys get those sheets printed out by any chance, those quick fact sheets? If not, you guys can look this up. This is a quick fact sheet. It's NFPA 1710. NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. They are pretty much, they set the standard for the fire industry, okay? 1710, it's a long name, but it's standards for the organization and development of fire suppression operations, emergency medical operations, and special operations to the public by career fire departments. So that's us. So this is the standard in which we are judged against, okay? I wish it was a little bit better to see, but the very first box there, it talks about occupancy type. That's a single-family residence. Single-family residence per the NFPA standard requires a minimum of 16 members, 17 if you're using a truck company. So remember I said we have 13 people on duty. The standard is we need to have 16 people. That's for a standard residential. If we're talking a strip mall or an apartment complex, that number goes up to 27 or 28 with a truck. And then a high rise, which we don't have high rises, but we have what would fall under the same category as a wide rise, very large commercial structures. That calls for 42 or 43 people. So I set our duty strength as 13. The minimum standard is 16. However, it's not required that we have all these people come from our department, right? So we can utilize mutual and auto aid agreements in order to meet this standard. What is important to note, though, is according to 1710, and if anybody wants to look at this afterwards, I have the paper. You can actually look at it so you can see it a little bit better. There are time parameters in which we have to meet these standards, okay? So the first 2 standards up there, that's going to be the alarm answer and the alarm processing time. That has nothing to do with us. You dial 911 on your phone, the call goes to Santa Cruz, there's a dispatcher there that answers it, looks at what the call is, and then dispatches personnel. We have no say in any of those times because it's a contract in which we pay Netcom out of Santa Cruz County for. The next one, turnout time. For fire is 80 seconds, EMS is 60 seconds. So that's the time from when we receive the call till we have to be out the door rolling to this call. First due engine, 4 minutes. Now here, San Juan Bautista, if the engine's not on another call, it's pretty easy for most calls for us to get an engine within 4 minutes to your property, okay? Again, if they're not on another call. However, that second due engine is 6 minutes. So if we have an incident that requires 2 engines, based upon our current staffing, the next closest engine, if they're in quarters, is 15 minutes plus away, okay? Now, if they're at the training tower or something else, they may be a little bit closer, but generally speaking, if they're in their quarters, the next engine is 15 minutes away. The full alarm, 8 minutes. That's for the low hazard. That's the 16 firefighters on scene. By standard, we're supposed to do that within 8 minutes, okay? 8 minutes, probably not even going to get my second engine there. But standard is 8 minutes, and then if we go to that high hazard, so that's the low or medium hazard, that's 8 minutes. All of them have to be on scene within 10 minutes and 10 seconds if we're talking about the initial full alarm for a high hazard. So that's the NFPA standard. That is a very specific, that's the guideline that they want us to push for. The text says on most of those 90% of the time, because it's understood you're not going to get it 100% of the time. They want you to strive for 90% of the time to meet these standards. Here's another standard that's important. Now, the fire service has tons of standards. This is just one more standard that's applicable to us here for San Juan Bautista and the greater San Benito County. So this next standard, this is SB 1207. SB 1207 was a Senate bill that applies to volunteer firefighters in California. Okay, so outside of California, it doesn't apply. But what this, in March of 2001, it was brought by by a senator. It went through the whole process, and then ultimately in October, the governor approved it. The governor approved it in 2001 in October. This SB 1207. Now, because of how important this was and how confining this was, it actually didn't go into effect until 2004 to allow fire departments to try and meet this standard. And essentially, the crux of 1207 stated that it established volunteers as employees, which required them to have the same level of training as career firefighters. So it doesn't matter whether you're a volunteer or a paid firefighter. 1207 said in the state of California, you have to have the exact same training. Okay? So just to understand the basic entry-level firefighter, okay, the standard in California, firefighter training requirements, you have to go through structure training, hazardous materials training, wildland training, and medical training. Structure portion is 264 hours. Hazardous materials is 24 hours, wildland portion is 56 hours, and EMT training is 184 hours. So before you ever start one day as a firefighter, volunteer or paid, it doesn't matter, that's over 525 hours of training that's required before you ever get on the engine. Now, that's just to get on the engine. Then there's a requirement of 20 hours a month to maintain your training. Additionally, there's also running the calls. So a little over 525 hours for the initial training, and then 20 hours a month, that's a requirement. All the other things that are required for firefighters, all the medicals, all the equipment, all that stuff, it's all the exact same. So essentially, with 1207, the only difference between a volunteer firefighter and a paid firefighter is the salary they collect. Okay? So how does Hollister Fire compare to other fire departments? Okay, so we talked NFPA. They set standards. They also do other things. They collect data. Okay? So NFPA did the U.S. Fire Department profile in 2020. So that's not, these are the standards we want you to achieve. This is what other fire departments are actually doing. Okay? So what they stated in their profile 2020 was for mostly career or all career fire departments, such as Hollister Fire, the rate of career firefighters per 1,000 protected have remained in the range of 1.5 to 1.8. So roughly 1.5 to 1 3/4 firefighters per 1,000 residents protected. Okay? Everybody knows what happened in LA. One of the big things was we were understaffed, underfunded. CNN did an investigative report. They called it Beyond the Brink. And the data shows that LA Fire Department among the most understaffed fire departments in the nation. And there's a quote, it says specifically in there, despite being located in one of the most fire-prone areas in the country, LAFD has less than one firefighter per 1,000 residents. So LA City, and I'm not comparing us necessarily to LA City, but think of this concept. LA City has over 3,500 firefighters. They have 106 stations, and they cover 471 square miles. We cover 1,388 square miles. Okay? This bottom bullet, Hollister Fire has roughly 0.6, or 1/3 the national average. 0.6 suppression firefighters per 1,000 people protected. Okay? So they're calling out how devastating LA fires were, and I'm sure that's going to come up a little bit later. They were at 0.9. That's their staffing. 0.9 firefighters per 1,000. We're at 0.6 here in San Benito County. So I get asked this by my boss all the time. There's these standards. Everybody's got standards. What do the standards really mean? How achievable are the standards? I know this is really hard to see, and it's hard to see on my paper too, so I'm going to put my glasses on. Give me just a second. So this is if you could see it, what it would say is the disaster company. The disaster company is not a fire company. They are basically a restoration company after disasters, floods, earthquakes, all that. They're out of Utah, so probably not earthquakes in Utah. But that's what they do. This is their evaluation on the progression of a fire. So here's the typical timeline of a two-story house being engulfed. And I'm not going to go through every one of those, but at 30 seconds in, the fire starts to rapidly grow. At 1:35, the temperatures of the house get higher than 190 degrees. At 1:50, the smoke detector goes off. So middle of the day, you notice the fire, you're good to go. Middle of the night, you're almost 2 minutes into the fire before your smoke detector goes off, before you're alerted and woken up. You wake up, you open the door, two-story house, that's this scenario. You open the door, oh no, there's smoke. You shut the door, try and figure out that brain fog of being asleep. What am I going to do? You're almost 2 minutes into this. At 3 minutes in, the temperatures in the room where the fire started are now at 500 degrees. At 3 minutes and 40 seconds, flashover occurs. So flashover is everything in the room has been heated to the point where everything starts to ignite all at once. That's flashover. That's 1400 degrees. That's at 3 minutes and 41 seconds. At 3 minutes and 50 seconds, so 2 minutes after your smoke detector went off, the only possible way out is a second exit. So if you're in a two-story house and you haven't gotten out yet, your only way out is through a second-story window. And according to the disaster company, at 4 minutes and 30 seconds, flames will have engulfed the home's exterior and rescue is no longer possible. So we think back to that slide earlier. You get, let's call it, a minute and a half for dispatch, a minute and a half for us to get out the door. We're 2 minutes before you even noticed that the fire was going, and then 4 minutes for us to get on scene. That's just for us to get on scene. That doesn't mean we're actually starting to take action at that time. That's just for us to get on to scene. And that's just the first engine. Now, that's one perspective. Here's another one. This one is from Palm Beach County Public Safety. And so this is actually tied to a fire department. Their numbers are slightly different. I wanted to give more than one example. So there says fire can double in size every 30 to 60 seconds. Anybody who's been around the fire service has heard a statistic pretty close to that, doubling in size every 30 to 60 seconds. In 8 minutes, a fire can grow by 64 times. Okay, so that small fire in a corner of a room, 8 minutes, it grows 64 times. The progress of a structure fire to the point of flashover, they're stating between 7 and 10 minutes. So sounds a little better than the last one, right? If that's the case. And I do want to reiterate, I want to state that there's a lot of different factors that go into how fast a fire spreads, right? It's not just every fire is going to spread at the same rate. The fuel loading in your house, that has to do with it. The building construction of your house, that has to do with it. The amount of available oxygen in a room, doors being closed, all those things come into play. And so for our safety, if anybody is interested in getting more information, you can reach out to our prevention division, and we'd be happy to help guide you on how to make your home safer. But in this case, 7 to 10 minutes. So we talked about 4 minutes to get on scene, potentially, up to 4 minutes, plus a couple minutes before for the dispatch and turnout time, plus the 2 minutes for you guys to notice a smoke detector. Okay? Now, the laws require, OSHA laws require, if you're out of your house, there's no rescue. I talked about the 15 people, and if anybody's interested in what those 16 people are doing on scene, I've got charts that could show you what all of our personnel do on all different types of calls, vehicle accident, EMS calls, all that. But if we get on scene, we don't have to wait until there's the 16 people to start doing stuff. But we do have to, if there's not a rescue involved, we do have to wait for a certain number of people. We need to have somebody to operate the pump panel. We need to have somebody in charge of the incident. I have to have 2 people that can go inside and then 2 people that are outside. So with our 3-person companies, well, as soon as I get 2 engines on scene, I can initiate a fire attack. Okay? The other crews come in and they take care of the other jobs that have been delayed because we weren't on scene yet. But with 2 3-person engine companies, we can initiate a fire attack. Now, if it's a rescue, rescue, I can pull up in my SUV and I can go in and try and rescue you. I don't have to have, the law allows me to do that, doesn't require anybody else. But think about that for a second. You're inside having a problem getting out. If I show up, just me, I don't have water, I'm not slowing the progression of that fire. So I can take action, but that fire is going to still continue to grow, just making me a better trained potential victim. Okay? So in the command and control process that we use, generally the first engine would go in to start rescuing, the second one would go to try and control the fire, and we'd go back and forth till we can get you rescued. But in that scenario, even if the fire engine shows up with the hose, they've got to either try and put the fire in check, or they've got to try and effect a rescue. The more people you have on that engine, that's why NFPA wants you to have 4, advises you could have 5. We run 3. Most fire departments run 3. But the extra people on the engine allow you to do extra things. In the case that you don't have the extra people, you need to have other engines show up on scene. So, does San Benito County have wildfire risk? Okay, absolutely, and I believe Chief Nunez will probably talk a little bit more about it. It's more his area of expertise. But I did put a little bit of stuff together for you guys here just to understand. So, First Street, and if anybody has ever looked for a house on something like Redfin, you scroll the bottom and they talk about flood potential and fire potential and air pollution potential. That's First Street. They check the potential for disasters, right? So according to First Street, there are 23,410 properties in San Benito County that have some risk of being affected by wildfire in the next 30 years. This represents 98% of all properties in San Benito County. So according to First Street, 98% in the next 30 years have a wildfire risk. Okay, some level of potential. Now, I presented to the Fire Advisory Committee, and CAL FIRE was mandated to update their fire hazard severity zone maps. They were delayed a little bit because of the LA fires. So I don't have that data yet. I was supposed to get it in January, but instead they're coming in March. In March, it's a very scientific way of modeling that'll give us a map of all of San Benito County. As soon as I get those maps, the 3 different jurisdictions plan to post them on their web pages, so it'll be available to you. You can look up where your house is and see what your potential is. And those maps will be will identify anything that's moderate, high, or very high wildfire risk by this CAL FIRE modeling. Since I don't have it, that's why I put the First Street information in there, so there's an understanding as to the potential wildfire risk in San Benito County. So what's being done to improve the fire service in San Benito County? Because that's really what everybody should be concerned with. What's being done to make things better here? So we have established auto aid agreements, and I told you that I don't need to have 16 Hollister firefighters on scene. I need to have 16 firefighters on scene, right? So we have Aromas Tri-Counties, which is operated by CAL FIRE, South Santa Clara County, which is also operated by CAL FIRE. We have auto aid agreements with them. We have a phenomenal working relationship with CAL FIRE San Benito Monterey unit. So we have auto aid and mutual aid agreements that help us work more efficiently. We send engines their way, they send engines our way, so that we can rely on each other's resources in order to provide public safety to our county. We do joint training. We train with CAL FIRE. Our training cadre, they're members of the Monterey County Training Officers Association. I'm a member of the Monterey County Fire Chiefs Association. We work through partnerships with South Bay Regional Public Safety Training Consortium. It's a long name, but we do training with them, so we try and keep our skill levels up and work with our neighbors. We also have an annual operations plan. The annual operations plan, or AOP, at the beginning of every wildfire season, CAL FIRE, Hollister Fire, we get together. The plan doesn't change a whole lot, but we go over our plan for the wildfire season so that we're all operating on the same page. We polish up our skills, remember things we didn't know. For new people coming in, they get a chance to see that. So that's done through the annual operating plan, which we do ahead of every wildland season. And then the last one on there, the Fire Protection Advisory Committee, which is made up of elected officials and staff members from all three of the jurisdictions. It's an advisory committee. They're exploring the fire district option. There is a consultant that put forth a bid, and they're going to look at, the plan is for them to look at the feasibility of creating a fire district, also look at our current operational efficiencies and maybe things that we could do better to better provide protection to the community. So the main reason why we're here is let's talk about San Juan Bautista, okay? So San Juan Bautista is protected predominantly by Fire Station 4, attached to City Hall. And I say predominantly because the benefit to the arrangement we have, Hollister, San Benito County, and San Juan Bautista, we all benefit from having all 4 engines. So if we have a major fire in Hollister, we have the other engines coming to help us that are within our system, and the same goes for if there's a fire in San Juan Bautista or in San Benito County. So Fire Station 4 predominantly protects San Juan Bautista, and that's a San Juan Bautista-owned city fire station. It's got 3-person full-time staffing, 24/7, 365. In 2024, Station 4 responded to 626 calls for service. 281 of those calls were in the city of San Juan Bautista. The equipment that's housed in San Juan Bautista, there's Engine 14, which is a San Juan Bautista-owned fire engine. It's a Type 1, which is your traditional fire engine, and it's a 2005. There's also typically Engine 16, which is a San Benito County engine. It's a 2010 Type 1, again, your typical one. It's a reserve engine. And then there's Engine 624, which is a Hollister-owned engine, which is a Type 6, and that's intended more for the wildland response. That's your F-550 off-road vehicle with water and tools on it for going up into the foothills. There's also a side-by-side generally staged there. That side-by-side is used, that's also Hollister-owned, the 2017, and that's used for the rib cook-off, the county fair, the upcoming motorcycle rally. So the thing to note is the recommended lifespan of an engine is 10 years frontline, 10 years reserve. So the San Juan Bautista engine, that's a 2005, that's 20 years old, still on the front line. Should be 10 years frontline, 10 years reserve. That's the standard. There's a bunch of, just like everything else, there's a bunch of things that go into the usefulness of it and how long it can stay, okay? And then the San Benito County owned engine, that's a 2010, so that's 15 years. It's in reserve. It's in the status that it should be in. The last thing I'm going to say before I turn it over to Chief Nunez is the closest fire station to San Juan Bautista, which is something we have to be concerned with, is about 15 minutes away. So that's 15 minutes away, and it obviously is getting better now that the 156 is not as cluttered, but that's also if they're not on a call. If they happen to be at the training tower, which is a little bit closer, they may be a little bit closer. If they're on a call and it's a further station away, then it takes a little bit longer. But it's roughly that first engine probably is going to be there in the first, couple of minutes, and then that second engine is over 15 minutes away. With that, that's all I have for the presentation of this point. I'm going to invite up Chief Nunez to do his portion, and then we'll start hitting some questions.
It's all good. Roy, were you able to receive that email? Is there any way we can put mine on there too, or no? Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right. Make sure I don't trip on this. Nick, give me a timer because you know how this goes. You just gave me the microphone and you let me talk about the things I know and the things I love, which is my department, the people I get to work with, and the people that we work for. Thank you all for coming out today. I've got family, I've got friends in the room, and I want to make sure I don't mess this up, because I can tell you this. At some point in your life, everybody needs a firefighter. You will need the fire department at some point in your life, and I hope they make it there, take care of your family the way they need to be taken care of, and do it with the utmost care that it deserves and that it warrants. I've needed them 4 times in my lifetime, and 4 times they came through without fail. I know what I leave And when I leave my home, I know what I leave. My family is the most precious thing to me, and I know they are in excellent care of where I live and the people that are going to take care of them in my absence. We know what we've signed up for as firefighters. We know the job, we know the responsibility, and we know that in your worst possible time and date, we will be there within the time that you need us there to be able to take care of your family. We continue to do this day in and day out. Nobody does it by themselves. It's not done on an island. And we do this in collaborative, cooperative care between agencies. That's why we have AOPs. That's why we have mutual aid. That's why we cover each other. None of us does this by ourselves. You've seen the city of Hollister, and you've seen what San Benito County offers and brings for you. Now I get to tell you what CAL FIRE brings. We will always have a footprint in the county of San Benito because we are responsible for the state responsibility areas, which is about 9 million acres in San Benito County. So, that being so, I've got 5 fire stations, I've got 7 fire engines, I've got an air attack base, I've got assistant chiefs, 3 battalion chiefs, and I've also got a vegetation maintenance program that currently is taking care of 4 projects totaling 14,000 acres in and around San Benito County. So rest assured, when people ask, do you have big wildfires? Yes, we do, but we're doing our best to make sure that it doesn't grow outside the box that we can maintain and we can control. And if it does, we reach out to the units around us, Santa Clara CAL FIRE unit, Santa Cruz, Fresno, Madera, Mariposa. If we need to, we will move small cities within 24 hours to be able to do what we need to take care of, which is your homes, your property, and your family. So, at a glance, in San Benito County, you got 64,000 residents in the county, 43,000 last I checked. It covers 1,390 square miles. The cities include the city of San Juan Bautista, Tres Pinos, Paisinas, San Benito, Panoche, and Bitterwater. And like I said, we got 5 fire stations spread out throughout the county to be able to take care of not only the state responsibility areas, but also to assist the county of San Benito and Hollister Fire Department on the daily. We also have a Hollister air attack base, which you'll see our Firehawk flying out of, as well as our air tankers and our air attack platform. And I rest assured, that platform's not going anywhere. In fact, we're looking at taking over an additional 40 acres on the other side of the base and building out a new air base that we hope to get finished with design and built in the next 5 years to be able to support not only the platforms that we have at the Hollister Air Base now, but also to look at down the line being able to support the C-130s that we just took ownership of. We've been able to get 1 C-130 converted with the hopes of getting 2 additional C-130s in the next 2 years to add to our fleet of 60-plus aerial resources throughout the state of California. Like I said, our vegetation management and community risk reduction program, we've got 4 projects in San Benito County alone, totaling about 14,000 acres. Our battalion chief that runs that program is always looking for opportunities. So if you have any ranchers in the room? All right. Well, do me a favor, reach out to any ranchers that you may know and let us know if they'd like to work with us on some of our upcoming projects, so that way we can get them listed, as our program is probably one of the top 3 in the state of California from San Diego to Siskiyou. We've been able to blacken 11,000 acres in San Benito and Monterey counties in the past 2 years with the additional help from grants from both the state to be able to get these taken care of. So that way, when we do have these big fires, they're not going to continue to burn one entire county into the next. Much like some of the fires in Northern California in the past couple of years have burned through 3, 4, and 5 counties at a time. We're making sure that when we put the project out there, we fly it, we grid it out, we map it, we make sure that it meets our need, and then we work with the landowner or the rancher to be able to get it in and get it completed. So when you do see smoke in the air and you do see that we are doing prescribed burn, rest assured, We've double-checked it, triple-checked it, made sure that nothing's going to come out of the box, because we know that when we put fire to the ground, we own it the minute we lit it. And I want to make sure that everybody rests assured that it's taken care of. We will have people out there overnight. If you do see smoke in the sky and you don't see the signs that we are burning, please, somebody make a phone call, all right? We have, in addition to the engines, the fire stations, we have also our own bulldozer. We have 4 bulldozers in the San Benito Monterey unit. One is based out of the Hollister Fire Station, and our hand crews are based out of Gavilan Conservation Camp. We run 2 inmate hand crews, and we run also a National Guard hand crew. And yes, everybody and almost everything that we had was in Southern California on January 8th, and we still had folks on our engines running our daily calls. We were able to call people back. We were able to staff up engines, and we were able to send everything we could to Southern California in their worst time of need. And not only was it CAL FIRE, but we sent over 180 staff, engines, and personnel from San Benito and Monterey counties to go down there and assist. Some spent up to 30 days. Some came back, went back for another 30 days. So rest assured, what happens in California affects everybody. And it affected us to the point where we were actually given the opportunity to hire our seasonal firefighters back. So that's why we have those additional engines staffed up now and ready to go. Like I said when I started, at some point in your life, you're going to need the fire department. If you're not sure what's coming to your house, if you're not sure, please ask the question. Ask the question of anybody in here wearing the patch, because they will give you the answers. I do not want anybody to leave this room with their questions unanswered, okay? You know what we bring. You know we will always and continue to be here. The state footprint is not leaving the county of San Benito anytime soon, nor are any of our engines going anywhere. We will continue to have the air base, and should you have any questions, please feel free to ask anybody here, like I said, wearing one of these patches, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what patch walks into your house, just that those firefighters come through that door and take care of you and your family in your hour of need. Because we know when you call 911, that time doesn't belong to us, it belongs to you, and that's what we're here for. So thank you, and I'll open it up to, I'll turn it back to the Chief or Roy.
All right, thank you to both presenters. With that said, we're going to start opening it up for questions. There was 3 that were automatically, well, the most asked questions of us. One, which is probably why everybody's here, why are costs so expensive? I'm going to give that to Chief Golden.
So that's a fair question. Why is the fire service so expensive? So let's start with the obvious. If you look at the inflation rate over the past several years, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 2019, 1.8% inflation rate. 2020 was 1.2. 2021, 4.7. 2022, 8%. 2023, 4.1%. And 2024, and this wasn't all the way at the end of the year, was 3.3%. So if you happen to have been somebody who has sat down with me and gone through a similar type presentation, that's normally more of a 4-hour presentation. You would have heard this already, but I want to explain the difference between the cost of fire service goods and the cost of standard goods. So when I grew up in Gilroy, I used to do lighting and sound effects, and we used to use a smoke machine made by Roscoe. Years later, when I was a fire captain, we had a Tempest fogger. Okay, exact same machine. It was made by Roscoe. Tempest is a fire service brand. It was slapped on the side of it, and the fuse went out. And I looked up the fuse, and the fuse from Tempest was 20 plus. I don't remember the exact amount. It was a long time ago, but it was over $20 for this fuse. I read the Roscoe fogger, or the Roscoe number, and I called up Roscoe, and the fuse was less than $2. So I called Roscoe. I said, hey, is there a difference? They said it's the exact same fuse. So essentially, the Tempest fuse was bought for $2 if they paid wholesale or paid retail and marked up 10 times. So of course, in this case, I purchased the Roscoe one because it's not a life safety issue. I think probably within that same year or within a couple of years, we had a bunch of carabiners that we used for rescue for my fire department. They were all G rated, general rating. Exact same rating as an R rated, which is a rescue rated carabiner. We had to replace them all at a much higher cost because for the fire service, it has to be rated, rescue rated, and that was the NFPA standard and the OSHA standard for the fire service. So as soon as you make something a fire service item, it automatically becomes much more expensive. And it doesn't matter, it could be the exact same item, but if it comes to something that has to do with life safety, the fog machine, smoke machine, that wasn't a life safety item. But everything else, there's a tie to that that increases drastically the cost associated with it. So I was asked recently by the city manager to put some numbers together, and I don't remember them all off the top of my head. I thought I had the paper sitting there. But looking at over the course of just 2 years, 3 years, our turnout coats, which are required. Every firefighter in our department has to have 2. They have a 10-year lifespan, and they went up over 40% in 2 years. Why? Because they could. And it wasn't just that manufacturer. At the time when this was skyrocketing, I looked at several different manufacturers, and they were going up anywhere from 12 to 24% in one fell swoop. One price increase going up 12 to 24%, and there's nothing you could do about it. It's required for us to do our job. Most of our items, our hose, our turnouts, our SCBAs, they all have a lifespan. So it's not just I buy it once and put it on the rig and I'm good to go. I got to keep buying them over and over and over and over again. So like I said, a turnout coat went up 40%. That's a couple $1,000s. Every one of my firefighters has 2. They have to have the pants, they have to have the boots. All in all, the total cost of outfitting a firefighter is roughly $10,000. Roughly. Okay? If it's going up 40% over the course of just a couple of years, it gets more and more and more and more expensive. Hose went up, I want to say it was 40% in 2 years, and then the next 2 years went up another 40%. 15% for this shirt over 3 years, 39% for this belt, not including the belt buckle, just the belt. So anything that's fire related. This shirt here is a fire rated shirt. It's got chemicals in it that probably are going to cause cancer in me, but they're flame resistant. Okay? So these pants, this shirt, all these things, anytime you make something a fire specialty item, the costs go up drastically more. And there's a liability on us if we choose not to buy the fire rated items. Okay? If anything happens to somebody, that's where they're going to point at. You didn't have this, you didn't have that, they weren't fire rated. Our ropes have to be rated for the type of rescue we do, the tools we have, and that's the thing. Like I said, all these items, they have a lifespan. The tools we use to cut people out of cars, everything. Another thing that happens is the scope, the medical scope, changes over time, right? So it requires us to have new tools. Well, when you buy a Band-Aid and it sits there for a long time, what happens? It's not as good anymore. So all of our stuff has expiration dates. So it doesn't matter how often we use it. We are required to have certain things that we have to purchase that only last for a certain period of time. So whether we use them or not, we have to throw away an unused item and rebuy it again. So those are some of the reasons, and afterwards I have my business cards. If anybody wants to sit down and get deeper into the details, we can. I'll give you my business card. We could sit down if you want to go through the 4-hour presentation with me. I don't know if you really want to, but I'm willing to sit down and go through that with you. But you get a better understanding, and we'll actually look at numbers, specific numbers on why things go up. But I know every one of you guys have felt the inflation rate over the last 5 years. Just think that it's amplified when it comes to the fire service.
Another question I'll give this to Chief Nunez. Is San Juan Bautista vulnerable to devastating wildfire?
San Juan Bautista is vulnerable just like the rest of the state, but San Juan also has several other things going for it. San Juan is nestled in between several state responsibility areas, And like I alluded to before, and I spoke about the 4 vegetation programs that we're working out right now with currently 14,000 acres on hook, we are addressing that as best we can. When you've seen the lines and you've seen the burning over on San Juan Road going up the hill, you understand now why we're doing this. Now you see what one strip and burn on the on the road can do and can lead to. And actually, one of our projects was surrounded one of those, which kept it inside the box, and we were able to manage and keep that fire from coming off the hill and burning towards town. That's just one of the projects that we've got. We've got several more going out, Highway 25, that have actually assisted in fires that we've had out there to keep the fires small, keep them manageable, so that way we can handle them in unit as opposed to having to bring in a team of 67 managers to be able to mitigate the fire. So we didn't have the 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 acre fire because we had already gone in there and done the pretreatment. We've already done the 11,000 blackened acres in the years past, and we continue to do that. Not only with our operations side, but with our vegetation maintenance program, with the foresters that we have. And just so I make sure that I get it out, I'm not only the chief of CAL FIRE for San Benito County, but for Monterey County as well. And between the two, we cover over 3.1 million state responsibility acres. Between the two, we've got 22 fire stations from the county line to county line, as well as our air resources. So when we do not only have bring the vegetation maintenance and the pre-planning to it, but we also bring the operation side to it as well. And we're also able to draw, since we are state resource, we are also able to draw from the air bases, that are local to us as well, which is Alma Helitack Base, the Fresno Air Tanker Base, the San Luis Tanker Base, and then if we need to, we will draw all the way from Sacramento and bases up in northern region. We've got 21 units for CAL FIRE from San Diego to Siskiyou. We've got 14 air bases. We've got 10 Helitack bases. We've got 15 Firehawks, which were Blackhawks that were reconfigured for our purpose, which is a bolted-on tank and bolted-on winch, so that way we don't have to set down, reconfigure. If we get a call for a fire and then we get switched to a rescue, we don't have to set down and do anything. We can reconfigure in the air and go from one call to another, so it's seamless. We got 15 of those, and we still have the 10 Hueys in storage in Sacramento that assist us in doing the burning. We use them for aerial ignition when we are doing the larger scale 1,000+ acre burns. So yes, you do have that threat, but we are doing our best on the state side and the department side to make sure that we mitigate it. And if anybody has any questions about it, by all means, please let us know. Like I said, talk to somebody in a patch. They will get you the information that you need to know. Do not leave here with any questions once you hit that door.
And another question is, why not supplement with volunteer firefighters? I'll let Chief Golding. We're asked this a lot, by the way.
So I believe in volunteer fire programs. I started my career as a volunteer. So by no means am I against volunteer firefighter programs. The National Volunteer Fire Council brings up the fact that volunteers comprise 65% of the United States Fire Service. But they also concede to the fact that many local volunteer fire departments are struggling to meet staffing needs. Their major contributing factors are the increased time demands, the more rigorous training requirements, and the proliferation of two-income families whose members do not have the time to volunteer. So when I got in the fire service, a lot of the guys that work for me got in the fire service. A lot of the CAL FIRE members got in the fire service. Getting in the fire service, you would have 1,000 people to try and get one job. Okay, so the way to get a job was to go be a volunteer. And people wanted to be firefighters. They wanted to be firefighters as a career. Okay, so let's look at the demographics of San Benito County. and the challenges that we face for volunteers in this county. Who's most likely to be a volunteer to actually be able to do the volunteer stuff, right? You're probably talking 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s. Generally, San Benito County, where are those people working? Are they working in the county? No, most of those people are working outside of the county. Okay, and also, if you're in that age range, there's a good chance you have a family at home, kids, small kids, teenage kids, you want to spend time with them. So if I'm working in San Jose, that's an 8-hour job, an hour lunch break, a 2-hour commute each way. So now I'm 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 hours that I'm away from my family. You add to that, I've got to sleep. There's, let's say 7 hours. On a good day, 7 hours. All right, so that's 20 hours of my day that's taken up during the week. What did I say? Over 525 hours before you ever can step foot on an engine. And then 20 hours a month of training, that is required. That's state law. It's required to do those things. Okay? That's before you ever run a call. So let's say there's somebody motivated out there to do that, and we bring them on, and they run a call. Everything I do for a paid firefighter, over $1,000 a year for their medical, all their turnouts that I told you is going up 40%. I got to provide all that stuff, the exact same for a volunteer versus a paid guy. How many hours do I have available to volunteer? Realistically. How many volunteers do I need to equate to a paid personnel? And what's the cost associated with that? The other thing is, in addition to my training captain who's handling the department's training, I have to have somebody to coordinate the volunteers. So now I need to have, realistically, if I have a good chunk of time that people are putting in, 6 volunteers to equal a paid guy. That has to have all the same training, all the same equipment as a paid guy. Or if they're putting in a little less time, probably 12 to equal 1 paid person. Now that being said, Hollister Fire did not stop our volunteer program. You can still go on CSFA's webpage and apply to be a volunteer with Hollister Fire. In my short time, if you don't know, I've only been here about 9 months. In my short time with Hollister Fire, I've talked to 2 people that were interested in being volunteers. And of those 2 people, we started talking about what the requirements were, and at the end they said, that's all right. If you're going to put that much of a commitment towards being a volunteer, you can go become paid. And the difference being, when I got in the fire service, 1,000 people applying for one job, now I've literally had firefighters sit in front of a fire chief who's offering them a job and say, I've got my choice. I've got offers from 3 other departments. I don't need to come here. If we can't get people that want to do the job, get paid to do the job, it's hard to get the volunteers. So it's not that we don't want volunteers or we're anti-volunteer or any of those types of things. It's very difficult to fund it, and it's very difficult to get the people that will give the commitment. If we had a strong group of people willing to do the commitment that would make it worthwhile, that would be one thing. We don't. Like I said, the 2 people that I've spoken to in my 9 months of being here, once they heard what they would have to go through and the things that they needed to do, they were no longer interested in being a volunteer. Now that being said, I talked about the feasibility study that we're looking into through the Fire Protection Advisory Committee, right? One of the things that they're going to analyze is maybe we're looking at it wrong. Maybe there is a mechanism to supplement with volunteers. Supplement. We'd have to supplement. We cannot replace. I already showed you that we're way understaffed. But there may be a mechanism to supplement with volunteers. At this point, I don't see it, but if the consultant can find a way that makes sense for us, then we can look at it. But again, you could still, I have a job description for the reserve firefighter for Hollister. It was re-upped in 2018, but you have to be able to meet all the standards in order to be a volunteer for us. There's a liability on us, and there's a safety factor for you and us if you're not meeting those standards. So volunteers sound great. After what I told you a volunteer has to go to, is there anybody here who wants to be a volunteer for me? If so, come talk to me afterwards. Okay?
All right, with that said, we're going to open it up for questions and comments. So if you can state your name, where you're from, if you're from the city of San Juan Bautista, the surrounding areas, and who you want to address your question to. You can stand up in your chair or come up to the mic.
Yeah, Andy Moore, 505 2nd Street in San Juan Bautista. I've been here since 2006. For the Hollister chief, I was on the council for 6 years. Recently, I contacted the chief of Ben Lomond, Boulder Creek, Felton Fire, Zayani. They all volunteered staff. Okay, 34 volunteers in Ben Lomond, 30 to 35 Boulder Creek, Felton 15, Zayani 35. Then I went on because I'm down in King City a lot. I knew they were a volunteer station. Chief was super nice. As of a month and a half, he has 21 reserves. Strictly, 14,000 people live in that city. They have 14,000 people living there, 21 reserves, no full time, and their budget is $400,000 a year. Okay, so I hear you say, well, it's a lot of training. Well, answer, how are these other little cities doing it? And I'm not covering everybody in Monterey County or throughout the state of California. Okay, I'm just curious how they get by, because we had a heck of a volunteer station here in 2012. You know, and they were, you know, they met the standards. So I'm just curious how they're turning out people up in the mountains. Thank you.
I appreciate the question. That's not the first time a question like that has come up. And just before all this, I did talk to Council Member Friels about the transition. And the volunteers that were here, they sort of dissipated. They weren't making calls. That's where that kind of fell off. To your point, there are areas that do rely on volunteers, heavily rely on volunteers. You'll see that a lot in Santa Cruz County, absolutely. Most of them are PCFs. Central Fire relies on PCFs, which is a volunteer that just gets a stipend for going to the calls, okay? Some of the things that come into play is the availability of the people that want to volunteer, their ability to put in the time, okay, and their ability to respond to the calls. And my understanding from talking to Councilmember Friels was the people that were volunteers were just not making the calls, which caused the issue. And that's what I was trying to allude to before is the problem is having them be around and willing to do this. Now, other places in the state where you're not commuting 2 hours to go to work. You work at the local grocery store, local hardware store. When I started in the fire service, most of the guys that were in my volunteer agency, they worked locally in businesses that if something happened, your boss supported and wanted you to go, because if you're in the hills and those types of things, it's their business that's going to burn down if it doesn't get put out. So I'm not saying that your points aren't valid. I'm saying in our experience here, getting the people that are making the time to come to the calls and get the training and those types of things, that's where we're running into the issue. So the question is have we advertised and recruited? So yes, firehire.com, CSFA, those were all things, and we were advertising and not getting people. We do our fire prevention. One of the people I talked to was at our fire prevention day. So yes, there was advertisement, and there was no return on the investment through some of those means of Firehire and CSFA.
So if we can just keep the questions to 1 minute, because there's a lot of people here, and then we have translation services as well if anybody needs them.
Hi, I'm Leslie August, live across 156 in San Juan Bautista. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being here to give us this important information. My question is, what can we support in Sacramento to change some of the things that create problems for you? So there's a lot of information here, and somebody said at the beginning it's extremely complex. There's no one thing that's going to fix the problem, but are they doing anything to help the fire departments make it easier to hire firefighters? Where can we go to support the state to make your jobs easier so that we can get better protection?
Sure. So On January 7th, the world changed for us. You had a fire that nobody had ever seen. We sent engines, we sent all kinds of personnel, and it's like trying to fight an 80-mile-an-hour wind with fire pushing, and you're not just losing a handful of homes, you're losing entire neighborhoods. One of the questions that came up when we had several elected folks, several of our representatives down at the fires and actually taking tours, was what can we do to support you? And it all comes down to one thing. We needed more manpower. December 15th, we lay off our seasonal forces for CAL FIRE, and we go from 17 engines down to 2, which means I have one engine in San Benito County, and I have one engine down somewhere along the 101, either at King City or Bradley, for all of our state responsibility areas, because in December, we usually got rain. We usually got snow. So our fire season's over, so we lay everybody off. Well, December 15th, we laid everybody off. We didn't know 5 weeks later we would get the ability to hire them back. The electeds heard, and they answered our call, because we were called, we were told, be ready to hire your seasonal firefighter ones back and make sure that it gets done in less than a week. When we do a usual rehire class, I bring 70 to 100 firefighter ones back after the 3-month layoff, and it takes us about a week to get them trained up, ready to go, CPR certified, everything recertified that fell off in their 3 months while they were laid off. We were able to do the impossible, get everybody recerted and ready to go in one day. So reaching out to your electeds and letting them know that these are your concerns, that's where it's going to help us. That's how I've got 12 engines on the floor today ready to answer that call. That's why when you drive up and down the 101 or the 156 and you see that CAL FIRE engine with the 4600 number on it, that's one of ours, that's one of yours, and that's what they're here for. So staying connected with your electeds and letting them know that this is a concern to you, because it definitely affects us at the bottom or at the ground floor for our boots on the ground. Because again, on the 7th, it all went bad. On the 8th, we had people on the road. At one point, we had 180 staff, not just from CAL FIRE, about 120 was from CAL FIRE. The other 60 was from every other local government, because you had engines from the city of Hollister, battalion chiefs from the city of Hollister. You had engines from Monterey, Seaside, Marina, Salinas, Monterey County Regional. You had chief officer from every agency taking strike teams down there. There are homes in Malibu standing because of the battalion chief that was from the city of Hollister that had the strike team that was there to be able to defend them. That's where we get to help, making sure that we've got people that we can put on the road to be able to assist, and then still do our daily call of being able to answer the 8,200 calls for service a year that we run for CAL FIRE San Benito Monterey, and then the 6,700 calls they run here in the city of Hollister. Not only did we help them down there by the extra folks that we had, but we were able to still take care of everybody here in this room and your families. So please, when you get the opportunity to speak to your electeds, let them know that these are your concerns.
John Hopper, Wayne Street, San Juan Bautista. I've been here 30 years. I appreciate all the information. I think a lot of us, or most of us, are here today to ask the burning question of what's going to happen when the contract that we currently have with Hollister expires. You know, what kind of jeopardy are we in? I understand CAL FIRE's here to stay. I don't necessarily think they have a responsibility per se to protect the city of San Juan Bautista, but what happens when our contract expires, and what's being done in the meantime to, you know, address that situation?
So there's two parts of the contract, right? There's the San Juan Bautista part and there's the San Benito County part, but those two are tied very specifically together. So the contract valid till the end of December 2025 with multiple one-year extensions that are possible. Okay. When the prior council from Hollister issued the 270-day termination notice, and the city manager was faced with trying to renegotiate those contracts, the contract that was put forth before before San Juan Bautista, we met with the city manager and with the public safety coordinator. We brought it to the council. The council approved the contract. However, the contract was also tied to the county because, to be quite honest, for what San Juan Bautista pays for fire service, we can't provide that service without San Benito County. And for the station and the apparatus, we can't provide to San Benito County without San Juan Bautista, so it's a package deal. Okay? We started negotiating. I was involved in those negotiations. One of my battalion chiefs was involved because I don't have quite the history here. We were having these conversations. Council changed over. The current council removed that 270-day termination, which would have ended March 15th. So now the contract is live all the way to the end of the year. The status of the contract negotiations, to be quite honest, I have been removed from those negotiations, so I don't know what the status is. However, what I have been told from our mayor is that the conversations are going well. They're working towards a resolution. I just don't know what that resolution is to be able to answer because I'm no longer involved in those conversations. But like I said, the mayor of Hollister has told me that those conversations are going well and they're working towards a deal on the contract, which then would allow the contract that we negotiated with the city of San Juan Bautista to go into effect once they reach an agreement there.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm Mike Roller, new to the area for a couple of years, off San Juan Canyon Road. And I think you did some of what I had in mind here. Could you characterize what the dispute currently is and how far apart, in whatever terms it is? Is it dollars or is it terms?
You're speaking to the contract? Yeah, so I do know there was an original dollar amount that was brought by the city of Hollister, both to San Juan Bautista and the county. But to tell you what the terms are and where we are right now, again, I don't know because I'm not involved in those conversations. So I don't really have an answer for you as to where it is. All I've been told is that things are progressing well. That's the characterization that's been given to me, but as far as where things are, I'm not privy to that information. I would assume dollars is part of it, right? Because the city of Hollister asked for quite a bit of money, more than the contract was originally stated. But again, I'm not involved in those, so I don't know if that's where we're hung up on things right now or not.
Elise Bretnall, resident of San Juan Bautista. I'm one of the newbies here. I've only been here for now 4 years. And this is an absolutely fantastic place to live. This city is phenomenal. The people are phenomenal. And I'll be darned if I don't want to have fire and rescue for this community. I don't want anything bad to happen to anyone that's living here. And to think of a community, this community, without a fire department, it's just not acceptable. So I'd like to say thank you very much to all of you for the information. It's very informative. Obviously, it's a lot of information for all of us to absorb. This is an area of expertise, so we're relying on you to provide that. So thank you. My question is really for the City Council and Mayor Jordan. Where are we at with our negotiations? And can you please guarantee us that we're going to have a fire department?
So kind of as I said before, San Juan Bautista has already agreed to the terms of the contract. So the actual agreement that the city of San Juan Bautista agreed to was 3 years, 4 years. So, but again, it is tied to the bigger picture because we can't provide the services of San Juan Bautista without the county and vice versa. But the agreement that the city council did already approve is for the next 4 years.
I'm sorry, but if you've been pulled from the negotiations, then really you shouldn't be the one that's answering that. And that should come from the mayor and the supervisor, right? Because they're the ones that are tied into the negotiations. You've been pulled from it.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here. This is, I would say, the most crucial issue for our entire community, and we're taking it as seriously as it deserves. So I am part of the negotiation team along with Supervisor Velasquez. There's an ad hoc at the county level. There's an ad hoc at the city of Hollister level. And it took some time to get there. You know, things were a little contentious last year when essentially they put out the termination clause, which was a sort of, in a way, a threat to cancel services. They were essentially insisting on an additional $3.8 million. The county current cost is about 2.2, 2.3. That would have been almost a 200% cost increase. We simply didn't have the money for that. And so thankfully the new council came on and we immediately got to work with them, and Supervisor Velasquez and I negotiated with the new council. The first and most important thing was to pull that termination clause off the table. So the 270-day clock that was ticking that would have expired March 15th, we got them to pull that off the table. So that allowed us to have a more fruitful negotiation on dollar amounts. And so we are talking, we are close. I expect this to get done soon. To the question of, can you guarantee we'll have a fire station? You will have a fire station here in San Juan. I promise you, I guarantee you that. Okay, it is your station, certainly, Councilmember Fields. These things are complicated. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's why getting that 270-day termination clause off the table was the most important first step that we took. And really, in reality, and I know Scott and Leslie Jordan, Scott Friels, and all the other officials in San Juan can agree, that the key here is this is a bridge, a 2-year bridge, ideally, to a fire district. So we do have to look at, the costs that have become relatively unsustainable under the current model. The budgets just don't cover those costs. We do have to look at creative ideas and seeing if there is a way to incorporate reserved volunteer fire system again in San Juan. We have to at least explore this because the path that we're on is just not working. And so I will just say this. We will get a deal done. The county will get a deal done. San Juan will have their deal in place. It's a matter of time. We just need to create that bridge to the election in 2 years so we can go to the voters and ask them if they would like to explore this fire district. But yes, we are going to get a deal done. There's nothing more important than that. And I want you all to rest assured. There's been a lot of, information spreads like wildfire in a town like San Juan. And there's been a lot of misinformation, frankly, going around. We are negotiating. There was a quote in Benito Link yesterday saying San Juan's so concerned because the county's not negotiating. It's just not true. We've been negotiating. We've been at the table. We have another meeting Tuesday. We're getting close. We will get a deal done. Thank you.
My name is Maria Spandry. I live in Hollister. So for those of us who don't know, could you explain to me what a fire district is and what will that entail? Could you tell me what that means?
So a fire district is just a special district whose scope is just for fire service. So what that would look like, and it all depends on how it's formed. That's one of the things that the consultant will look at on how to form it. It's got to go through LAFCO. But essentially, to simplify it the most, is if we formed a fire district, the scope of where that fire district covers, if it's our current boundaries, would be basically all of San Benito County minus where Aromas Tri-Counties, which is a fire district, covers. And the sole purpose of that district would be for fire protection services. So it would have its own independent board, most likely, although it could be something where there's an appointed supervisor, appointed San Juan Bautista person, appointed Hollister person. That all depends on how they make it up. But ultimately, it'd be a group that would collect its funds. Some would come from the jurisdictions that are part of it. So San Benito County would put in some, Hollister would put in some, San Juan Bautista would put in some. If that needs a bridge of funds, there probably would be some sort of a parcel assessment for the homes, and then that district would only provide fire protection services. Basically everything that Hollister Fire does for those three entities would be done, and instead of me reporting to a city manager and 3 different governing bodies, I would have one governing body, that's the fire district board. So it depends on how it's done. So technically a fire district technically is responsible for fire protection services. However, generally most fire districts do also provide those other things like medical services. That's all part of the makeup of how the fire district operates. I know very few fire districts that don't regularly run the medical calls, and they, to be quite honest, they're volunteer departments that just can't get the people to go to the EMS calls. But generally speaking, when it's a paid, I can't think of, I don't know if, Chief can think of one, but generally speaking, most fire districts, even though their formation is for fire services, generally do run the other calls that we currently run.
Anyone else?
Hi, Chief. Hey, I had the fortunate, I was able to meet a high-level individual in Merced County Fire, which was CAL FIRE, and I was asking what his staffing was, and they said they just went from 1.0 to 2.0. Okay, so you guys run 2.0. Is that 365 days a year? I was.
So in Madera, Mariposa, Merced, in that unit, historically, they used to have a 1.0 contract, which means that their county paid for one person on the fire engine. CAL FIRE has long since gone away from the one person to 2.0. So when he said we just got two people, that's the funds from the county to CAL FIRE as a contractor to be able to pay for those 2 people. We used to have a contract in Tulare where you got one person on an engine, so when one engine showed up, you got one Larry. 2 engines showed up, that was 2 Larrys. Anybody? Seriously? Really? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, young man in the white t-shirt. I appreciate you. So the 1.0 staffing and we even had it in Riverside, because some of my chief officers used to run that. 1.0 staffing was you get to a fire, you charge into the house with the nozzle, you put the engine in reverse, and as the engine starts to reverse with a volunteer or somebody standing by it, it pulls you back out of the house. We've long since gone away from that. Tulare has just gone, or Madera, Mariposa has gone to 2 persons on the contract. Statewide, all of our new contracts are now calling for a minimum of 3.0 staffing, which gets us a captain, an engineer, or a firefighter, or any combination thereof, as long as we have a company officer. So all of our new contracts call for 3-person staffing. So you're going to see in the Aromas Tri-County District, we are working with the district to get that up to the 3rd body on the engine, as well as in our Soledad contract, because I have 6 additional contracts with different fire districts, right? I have Cypress Highlands, I have Carmel Highlands, I have Pebble Beach Community Services District. We run 3-person medic engine, everything on the coast. Soledad don't have the tax base like we do in Pebble Beach, but in Soledad, we're taking delivery of a ladder truck, and I can't run a ladder truck with 2 people on it. So we were working with the city to get that 3rd body. And you'll see in all of our contracts that those are the things that we are continue to work towards to get that 3-person staffing for the engines, so that way we have enough personnel, because you need somebody to be on the street watching the fire, managing it, and you need the 2 people ready to go, because when 2 people go in the building, 2 people better be ready to go right behind them, and that's where our 2nd engine comes in. And what was your follow-up? So that is Madera County. That is through the county. The county can only afford that piece. That's what they pay them for their fire protection service, because that's all they can afford right now. But they did that knowing that in the future they are looking to get that 3rd body. As it stands right now, there are only 2 districts that we have that are 2.0, and we keep working towards getting that 3rd body, because we know 2 people on an engine in Soledad, we're behind the power curve the minute we get the call. That's why we're working on getting that 3rd body. as well as in Aromas. And then to the volunteer piece, another one of my districts is South Monterey County Fire Department. I have had problems in the past. We have 4 volunteer stations. Out of the 4 volunteer stations, I have 2 that are staffed up with volunteers that have a roster of a minimum of 20 people. The other 2 stations, I am still trying to get folks. I can't even get folks that live in the town to be able to volunteer to put in the time because of the time commitment it requires to be able to run those calls. So it is continually difficult. There is no easy button, and like the chief said, when we all started, the gentleman sitting in the back, we all started the same way. We all wanted to be a paid call firefighter because we knew that was going to get us to that permanent position. I know, I did it. I worked for 2 different cities. I worked for the city of Loma Linda and the city of Grand Terrace. Went from Grand Terrace to seasonal firefighter to medic, medic to medic engineer to camp captain to battalion chief to standing right in front of you now. It was a long road. It was well worth it, but a lot of these volunteer programs aren't there or can't find the staffing because, like the chief said, you're 18, 19, 20. How much time do you really have besides your schoolwork, your job, and taking care of everything at home to be able to commit 20 to 30 hours a week for training, mandatory training, and then your education? So it's tough all the way around. Yes?
So I'm just going to state it. With the Southern Cal fires, they had young men that were coming out of the incarceration, whether it was prisons. They were fighting the front lines. You're in South Monterey County. You have the prison there. There are well-bodied young men that are trying to rehab, turn around their lives. Is there any kind of consideration or maybe talk about employing these people?
Thank you, Lord, for sending this lady into my life right now. In my career, I have gone from a seasonal firefighter to a fire captain running inmate hand crews, and from a captain running inmate hand crews to a battalion chief, from a battalion chief to an assistant chief overseeing the Gavilan conservation camp. So yes. Does that program work? Yes. In the 11 years I ran crews, I've got about 15 men that work for me that actually got out, got their act together, turned their life around, bought their wives a home, put their kids through school, and raised successful young men and women. It happens. Is it difficult? Yes. Do we have another program in the state? Yes. Unfortunately, we only have one that works with the parolees as soon as they graduate camp or as soon as they parole from camp out of Ventura. And that program takes about 30 people a year. And in that year-long program, it gets them ready, gets them the education piece, gets them the Firefighter 1 to where they can apply to work for CAL FIRE. And I can tell you, I have folks that have spent some time in correctional facilities and on hand crews that work beside me, that work for me, that work with me, and that work with me in other agencies as well. So yes, it can be done. And right now there are a handful of programs. There's the program that we run out of Ventura Conservation Camp, and then there's also the firefighter recruitment training program that actually a firefighter that was on hand crews got grant funding and was able to put a program together where he actually runs a program for both female and male formerly incarcerated firefighters. So it can be done, and they're doing it. It's just that you don't hear a lot about it because, like I said, we're able to get 30 people into that program, and it's a year-long paid program. Monday through Friday, they work and live on facility in a dorm-style setup housing. And after a year, they're able to go out and apply. And we've had a number of folks come out of our Gavilan Conservation Camp that have been successful in it, that actually work here in the unit and throughout the state of California. So thank you. Sure.
Sorry, we're starting to run out of time. Mayor wanted to say something?
Thank you. Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't My name is Leslie Jordan, for all of those who didn't hear it in the very beginning. I am the mayor of San Juan Bautista, and I apologize, I did not hear your name. And you're in the city? Rural, thank you. Just to answer your question, San Juan Bautista, the council members of San Juan Bautista have been at the table since March of last year when we first heard about the contract coming up in December, and that the city of Hollister was going to pull it in March of this year with a 270 days. The council, with a unanimous vote, voted to approve the contract that we had negotiated with the city of Hollister. It is contingent on the county signing their portion as well. We have been to the table since March. When we signed those contracts, we were excluded from everything, just as the fire chief has. The county of San Benito and the city of Hollister are in negotiations. We have no idea what's going on there. Once again, San Juan has signed the contract. We are all waiting with bated breath to find out what happens. So we are ready. We have been ready. We have answered the call.
Madam Mayor, one of the questions that you just mentioned right now is how come you have not been in contact with the ad hoc committee? Why are you guys not involved with that?
Oh, good golly. We are in contact with them all the time. We are not invited. We have asked to come to the table. We have been asked not to attend. Sure, you can write to your supervisor. You can write to all of the supervisors. You can write to the city of Hollister and ask them why. We have signed our contract. We are just waiting for the other parties to come to an agreement on theirs.
So just really quick, my name's Josh Padron. I was raised here in San Juan Bautista, and I actually started my career here with the volunteer fire department, and I got 26 years here, 3 with Hollister, thank you very much, and then the rest with the city of San Jose. I think the biggest thing is, where's the disconnect? Where's the disconnect with us as citizens here in the city in our town with the county? So is there anything that you guys might be able to answer?
Thank you for the questions. Sorry, my voice is a little low. I run out of breath. I had pneumonia 3 months ago, and I'm still fighting the after effects. So if my voice is crackling, that's why. I appreciate the question. I happen to be involved in the original creation, along with Andy, in creating this partnership. San Juan Bautista, the county, Hollister. I was the mayor at the time. You know what the model was? San Juan Bautista. We looked at you guys and said, San Juan Bautista has this incredible volunteer program. How do we incorporate that, become partners, and make this all work? We put it together at the time. Nobody was playing ball together. And it worked for several years. Times have changed. Things have changed. I'm now wearing the jersey of a county supervisor. What the past city council did by saying we're going to cancel the contract was the worst thing you can do. Because all us residents, including myself, are saying, what the heck's going to happen without the fire service? What we're doing now is sitting down, the county and the city, hammering out the last pieces, because this county and the city of Hollister are asking, or they're asking for so much money, or what can we do together? As San Juan already said, they worked out their contract. The county's portion actually does subsidize San Juan Bautista. We want to make sure we have a program that's going to last for several years, that can't be brought back in a year saying, oh, we're going to cancel it again. We want a program that allows us to all get in the future. What's that? Well, we can talk about that in a second. we can get together
in a way that makes sure we have a contract that lasts for several years. And the goal is to get to a district. Because if we can get to a district, politics don't play in this anymore. Politics should never play in any of this. And that's why we first created the program. But if the program's only one-sided, it's a failure. A district is where we need to go. Right now, the county and the city of Hollister are finding out the last pieces of this to make sure we have the length of time we need together and a fair contract to make sure San Juan Bautista is covered, the county's covered, and Hollister's covered. We are so close. I can't be more thankful for the new city council because we are doing really good things together. And as Supervisor Kosmicki said, we hear crazy rumors out there. Absolutely not true. We're getting there. We just want to make sure we have a program that will last all of us to get to where we need to go. And we are almost there, so thank you. I'll repeat, San Juan already worked out their deal. This is more of a financial issue. The expertise is going to be coming in as we move forward to the next steps on how we work together again and make sure we have a program that's working. Right now we're talking about the financial issues. Somebody made the comment about San Juan not being subsidized. Well, I can tell you, if you paid for it straight out, you'd be paying about $3 million. Right now you're paying about $500,000 or less. You're being subsidized. And you know what? That's okay. You play an important part of this county on the western side of it. So we have to work as a county to make sure we have the funding to make sure that this all works for all of us. And that's the key, all of us. It's not one city, it's all of us. Because, you know, our biggest fear back in the day, and still today, San Juan Canyon Road. We all knew, we all should know, if something goes up, it's going to be up there. And we need to be prepared for that.
Hi, my name is Scott Friels. I'm with the City Council of San Juan Bautista. I just want to clear up a few facts. The fire engine that runs out of this town comes from San Juan Bautista by a fire station that is owned by the City of San Juan Bautista. The fire engine that leaves this town to go to county calls is owned by the City of San Juan Bautista. To replace that fire engine, you're talking, Chief, a little over $1 million? $1 million. 1.2 million. To build a new fire station, newsflash, the county of San Bernardino does not own a fire station in this entire county. So if the county needed to put a new station, let's say at Rancho Larios or the mouth of the canyon, what's a new fire station? Okay, so let's say 20 million. And then now our county supervisors are saying they're so gracious that they're supplementing us. Well, this is a push. Sir, this is a push. You don't own a fire station. The people who are being protected on the northwest side of the county is from a fire engine coming out of our station. So it's a push. Just, I'm just making sure I answer that question. So I just wanted everybody to know that, you know, we're not begging for scraps here. We're actually doing our part also.
My name's Jennifer, and I'm from Rancho Larios. So my question is for Hollister Fire Chief, is how many of those calls coming out of out of San Juan Bautista are servicing highway accidents?
So I don't have the exact number in front of me. One thing to remember, part of 156 is within the city of San Juan Bautista. I do know every month that Roy does present, or if I'm available, I present the number of calls, and we do cover that. But there is a chunk of those calls that are on 156. A lot of them are 156 in Alameda, which is the city of San Juan Bautista. Some of them are outside, but would you say probably 5 plus a month? 5 plus a month? No, like that's why I say 5 plus. Some months, because I look at the numbers as they go through, but I would say generally it's a minimum of 5 accidents that are on the highway. Some of those do extend out onto Highway 101. Some of those do end up in the Aromas Tri-County areas where we're running our auto aid. But I've seen, 10, 12 in a month, but well, again, remember, the auto aid is only when it goes into Aromas Tri-Counties area. The rest of it is still Hollister Fire because, as I said kind of earlier on, we service San Benito County, San Juan Bautista, and Hollister, so it would still be our call regardless of which one. So all I can tell you is going back to the numbers on my PowerPoint when I finally got it going. This past year, Station 4 ran something like 680 calls. 281 of them were in San Juan Bautista proper. Somewhere in those, don't quote me on those numbers, but it was somewhere in the ballpark. So upper 200s were San Juan Bautista calls. The rest of those calls were either within the county or bordering on Aromas Tri-County area.
Mrs. Baines? She had her hand up first.
Thank you. I'm hearing all of this about the fire stations and all that, but there's something I haven't heard, and it's about insurance. Insurance companies, even if you haven't had a claim, are canceling, knowing that they're going to know that we are uncertain in our protection here. How dangerous is that for us to maintain what we already have, or for new people wanting to purchase here? Will they be able to get insurance, or will we just be cut off?
So insurance question is obviously a very big deal. So some insurance companies utilize ISO rating. Not all of them. They're not required to. But ISO is generally considered the standard for being able to get insurance. Now, the ISO rating of Hollister Fire is a 3. That is affected by our staffing levels. Our staffing levels go down, ISO rating goes up. A lot of insurance companies, they don't look at ISO, they actually analyze the data themselves. They look at how close a fire station is, what the water system is, what the training, the number of personnel, all those things come into play. So, for example, take San Juan Oaks. Insurance company reaches out usually the insurance companies, they will reach out to us, our prevention division will put together a letter that talks about where the fire stations are. We'll give them our ISO rating and all those types of things. So San Juan Oaks, first insurance company that reached out to us for San Juan Oaks, asked where our fire stations were in relation to there. They were all at 6+ miles away. They got denied the insurance because there wasn't a fire station within 5 miles. Now, I go back to the fact that it is up to the individual insurance companies. It's not stated just specifically due to ISO rating. The more personnel you have, the better equipment you have, and all those types of things, you can drop to 2 to 1. Generally speaking, an ISO rating of 1 to 4, generally speaking, that range, it does change, but you're still relatively protected. Right? It's once you get over that 4 where rates skyrocket. Where that affects quite substantially our businesses because their policies are bigger. The other thing going on with insurance in the state of California, so I just recently moved and I had State Farm. I no longer have State Farm. They wouldn't write me a policy. Had 0 claims against my house, but when I moved, they're not writing any policies, which is getting insurance more and more expensive. I had looked at a home that was out. It was in Prunedale. It was out in the country area, and my State Farm insurance had been $1,600 a year. My quote for this new, and I lived out in the country, the quote for the house that we were looking at buying was almost $14,000. So instead, I live now in the city of Hollister. I grew up in the country, want to be in the country. I moved into the city because that's where I could get insurance, and that insurance was $1,700. But on the outskirts, depending on what happens with the fire service, our ISO rating, or the parameters that we do, will affect the insurance companies. Now, if you haven't experienced it yet, insurance companies your house may be in the middle of city, nothing changes, they are still canceling policies, right? One of the reasons for that, as an understanding, is the state required insurance companies to have a certain percentage of their insurance policies to be a higher risk. They did that to try and protect those people that lived in higher risk areas, hoping that insurance companies would write more policies in the higher risk areas. Well, what they're doing instead is, if 20% have to be in a higher risk, instead of writing more policies in the high risk area, they're dropping policies in the low risk areas. So even if you do everything right, even if you're not in a high fire danger area, you're still at risk. They'll find ways, and it's getting obviously a lot more sophisticated now. They're flying drones over your house and saying you have too much moss on your roof. You're now canceled. So the fire department is a very big deal to go along with that. But you're not protected just because the fire service gets better or maintained. They can still drop you. But obviously anything that drops is going to hurt you, and it's going to give them a better excuse to drop you. How are we doing on time?
So again, I just want to start off by, I live in the rural area of San Juan Bautista. Just a quick heads up, thank you for everything that you guys do. I don't know if everybody really looks at all of the fire calls that you guys have been on in this last year. You guys have done an amazing job. If nobody knows that, thousands of calls that you guys have gone on, CDF, all the way down to King City, all the way up here, Aromas, you guys are amazing. Whether you guys, the public knows that, it's incredible. The reason I'm here today is I really just want to make contact with our local fire department, because you see me shaking my head. Yes, insurance out here is crazy, right? I've had my insurance company fly a drone over my house. I am a 0 fire hazard, and they raised my rate $500 a year simply because I live outside of San Juan Bautista. I don't have a fire hydrant near me. So these are all factors. Just wanted to say thank you. You guys have done a great job. I'm really hoping that the city of the town of San Juan Bautista can get on board and have you guys cover us. It's just a beautiful thing to have, knowing that we have coverage with these individuals that take so much time and training to make us safe. So thank you.
Okay, my second question is two-part. The first is for you, Chief. With the increases that have been proposed, are we going to be at status quo where we are right now, or will we have funding enough for you to run an optimal fire department? And then the second piece is, Commissioner Kosmicki, you've told us that you basically guaranteed that we are going to have a fire department. Are you going to support the fire department at the numbers that they need in order to be successful, save lives and property?
So, if I understand your question, the very first portion of it, at least, is the money. If what the city of Hollister asked for, is that going to be status quo or improved services? That's hard to say. Costs are going up. I don't know what the dollar amount's going to be. So if they gave the full amount, that was intended to get us mostly to where we needed to be to continue to operating what we're doing. We would have to internally look at efficiencies, which we do. Any of my guys that are here will tell you we got an approved budget. I scrutinize every penny that comes out of our budget. Stuff that was approved in our budget, that it's not, oh, we want this and we want that, and I'm choosing which want we get. It's we need this more, so we're not buying this need, we're buying that need. We are severely understaffed and underfunded. I think the numbers showed that. The fire service in general is that way. We are not immune to it. So the dollar amount to run the optimal fire department is probably well more than any of the 3 jurisdictions could afford. But how well we can run the fire department, we have a ladder truck on order that we need. We need to have it staffed. There is no mechanism to staff that truck right now. So those are some of those things that we have to look for. How do we get the efficiencies to have that truck available to us? But without knowing that dollar amount, I can't even begin to work on what these efficiencies are.
Mike, one last question.
Yeah, I appreciate that again, Elise. Yeah, so of course we're negotiating as a county with the city of Hollister, just as San Juan negotiated. Ultimately, the city of Hollister council makes decisions on the budget when it comes to fire staffing. The contract does require, and I know Chief Goulding is committed to having consultation with both San Juan and the county on the budget going forward, because that just wasn't happening, unfortunately. And I've been on the board for 4 years, going on 5 years, and I've never once had any consultation over the fire budget, which was actually required in the fire contract. So I know that's going to happen going forward. My expectation is that we're going to have, we can afford what we can afford, and I appreciate what the chief said as far as, we would love to have 4 or 5. We'd love to have multiple engines in each, in an ideal world. We do put a lot of money in this community toward fire services. The Hollister Fire Department is approaching $16 million. It's a very large, robust budget for a community of our size. We'd love to be able to afford more than that. I don't expect fire staffing to go down. I expect us to create this bridge again for 2 years to a fire district where there will then be more, ideally more stability going forward. Take the politicians and the politics out of it. We have more stability going forward in perpetuity into the future with the district.
Mike, it'll be the last question. We have to give up the gym, so that's why.
Yeah, my question was kind of answered by your comment, but today we had a lot of great information, but we're just barely talking numbers right now. I know that the 2023 annual report for the Hollister Fire Department, their budget was just under $14 million. And my question is, if we start a fire district, what is that cost going to be? Is it going to be $14 million? Is it going to be higher? Going to be lower? We need to know what we will have to pay.
So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you a solid answer on that because it all depends on what the fire district, how it's designed, how it's structured. And that is why we are looking to bring in this consultant to help us figure that out. The scope of work that the consultant is supposed to do on this fire district, we'll look at what the design looks like, the cost structure, and how we get to the funding, if there's alternative funding mechanisms that we can utilize. But it's hard to say what that fire district's going to look like, and so it'd be even more difficult to say what that cost is, but that's all part of the analysis.
Thank you very much. Before I bring our city manager up, I just want to thank everybody for coming one more time. CAL FIRE, thank you for showing up. We appreciate you. City of Hollister, can't thank you guys enough for doing what you do, for staffing our station 4, the coop. Guys, love you to the moon and back. Thank you so much for all you do. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for being here for us. If I can have our city manager, Ashley Collick, come up and say a couple of final things.
Thank you to the supervisors that are here today. I recognize that this is an incredibly complex and also a very difficult conversation. I'm a listener, so I don't really like to do a lot of talking. I like to do a lot of listening, so I stood in the back and I heard everything that was happening. And what I can tell you is you have to get through the difficult stuff in order and gain some understanding to make progress. And what I see here today from all of you is progress. I see a community that's passionate about what's going on, that wants to make progress. So while it looks ugly and it's not really fun, you know, your being here today means the world. It means that your community is progressing and moving forward, and that we're going to come to a resolution real soon. So I thank you once again for being here. Thanking the chiefs in the back, CAL FIRE, City of Hollister, Board of Supervisors. A couple of housekeeping notes. This has been recorded thanks to CMAP. Thank you guys for being here today. We had translation services, but I'm not sure we needed them. But we are going to post it on our website. We're going to send it out on social media. If you haven't signed in and you want us to email you the video, you want us to email you the PowerPoint, please connect with us in the back, and we'll make sure that we get you that information. But reach out. If you have any questions, send us an email. Connect with your representatives. Tell your neighbors what's going on. And with that, have a lovely afternoon.